1/8 teaspoon white pepper, and 3 shakes hot red pepper sauce. Before we start the recipe, let's talk about dried beef. Now, this can be purchased at the grocery in several forms. It comes in jars or in a plastic meat packet, or even some delis stock it. Now, dried beef has been preserved by being heavily salted, and you should always rinse each piece under hot water for a few seconds, then let it drain before using it. The instructions are always included on the packaging. The julienne part is very easy. Just roll up the slices like this and cut with a pair of scissors. This is also very nice to perhaps just sprinkle on the top of a salad to give it a little extra protein. See, you have perfect julienne strips. Can't beat that, right? Now, in the saute pan, we've combined the butter and the beef and the onion and cooked those for about 5 minutes, and that enhances the flavor. Now, we're going to sprinkle on the 7 tablespoons of flour and cook that until it bubbles up. And ordinarily, that takes about 7 minutes. And here we go. Let me get it all combined here. We're making a roux again with the meat already added. Now, this recipe for frizzled beef came to me from Mary Ann Norton and her husband Walter, who now operate a bed and breakfast in Newburgh, Indiana. It's called the Phelps Mansion Inn, and it's become a destination spot. And the house is decorated very handsomely with furnishings from what used to be Arabia, India, and Africa, where the Nortons lived for a while. He was a doctor there. And they also have a lot of nice American antiques. Now, if you're in southern Indiana, in that area, be sure to stay at the mansion. There's also a very good country store there called the Newburgh Country Store. You won't want to miss that either. I'm going to turn that up a bit to give it a zap. Now, you're going to add the milk all at once and cook and stir until the mixture is thickened. And that may take about 8 minutes. It's already beginning to cook. I can see that. We used to have this for breakfast at home when I was a girl and served it on toast. Now, dried beef has served many a pioneer and a cowboy along the way, and some soldiers too, not to mention hungry tourists like Dick and myself. It never goes out of style. I always keep some on hand because it's a good emergency dish. Now, when this comes to a boil, and it won't have time to do that, sprinkle in the cheese. I always kind of like to use an extra sharp cheese. And then we're going to add the pepper and a speck of the hot red pepper sauce. That depends on your taste, but this really does give it some depth of flavor. Then let this thicken up just like gravy. Oh, I've made a terrible mess here. I'm going to wipe that up. Compulsive obsessive, you know, and it makes me very nervous when the kitchen gets dirty. Thank goodness I wasn't that way when my children were little. I would have been bananas all the time. Now, this particular recipe would be ideal in a chafing dish, and it would work very well for a brunch or breakfast party. Serve this hot over toasted English muffins or biscuits. You could easily double or triple the recipe. The sharp cheese and the salty dried beef create a perfect marriage. This next recipe is called savory minced chicken and pork pie. Meat pies would surely have been served in the servant's kitchen at Biltmore, for this was a practical and economical main dish. Here are the ingredients: 2 tablespoons vegetable oil, 1 cup chopped onion, 1 garlic clove minced, 1 whole chicken breast, about 14 ounces, skinned, boned, and cut into 3/4 to 1 inch pieces, 3/4 pound lean ground pork, 1 tablespoon Worcestershire, 1/2 teaspoon salt, 1/2 teaspoon dried marjoram, 1/4 teaspoon mace, 1/4 teaspoon black pepper, 2 eggs, 1/2 cup dry white wine, 1/2 cup minced fresh parsley, 1/2 cup quick cooking oatmeal, and for garnish on the pie top, paprika. In a saute pan, cook the butter and the onion and the garlic together for about 3 minutes, and then add the chicken and the pork. Make sure the pork is very lean, and it's very easy to cut up the chicken if you have frozen it just for a few minutes or maybe up to 20 minutes in the deep freeze, because it gives some body to the chicken and it slices very easily. So now we're going to add this to the skillet and let it saute. And that's going to give a lot of flavor to this dish. We'll brown the chicken pieces, and then we'll have the wonderful pork juices. And I'm going to turn that up to high. Then we're going to add the seasonings. A tablespoon of Worcestershire. And this is a very old English condiment, and it certainly enhances a lot of our dishes here in America. And then we're going to add these spices. Now, for those of you who collect or know about McCoy pottery, I want to tell you about this little piece. I'm sort of embarrassed to tell you what it's called. It's called the wabbit. Yes, you heard me, the wabbit pattern. And this was a child's plate. It came as part of a set with a child's cup, a cereal bowl, and this plate. They're very hard to find because, like all children's things got destroyed, as you might guess. Now, one thing as you are cooking all this meat mixture together, you will notice that the pork has a tendency to clump together. So be vigilant about that and stir it occasionally, especially breaking up the pork clumps. This saute part will take about 15 minutes. There's going to be a generous amount of pan juices, but that's perfectly all right. Then after this is sauteed for 15 minutes, set it aside and let it cool slightly. But I'm going to continue to let it saute here, so it will have this flavor from the sauteing that's so important to the flavor of the pie. See this little clump of pork there? Get it. Now, in a bowl, beat the eggs and add the dry white wine. We use an Ohio wine here from Middle Bass Island. I think you've seen that on the earlier shows. And the parsley and the quick oatmeal. Now, the oatmeal and the eggs are going to thicken up the pie mixture and absorb all of those juices. There we are. Okay, pour this in. You can see how easy this is to do. Oh, I do love this pie recipe. There we are. Now, lower the heat a bit, and there we are, and continue cooking. Now, early colonial cooks made meat pies regularly as a way to use up the very last snip of butchering and leftovers. And during the winter months, they would make up lots of meat pies at one time and put them outside to freeze. Frozen foods are very old indeed, and they would bring them in as they needed them. Sometimes they stored them in the smokehouse. Now, since this isn't quite done, I do have a totally cooked mixture here to show you, and it looks wonderful. The cooked pork and the chicken and the fragrance of the mace and the marjoram and the wine, well, it's just really mouth-wateringly good. Now transfer this to a pastry-lined shell, rather deep if you like. Not if you like, I would say that's sort of imperative because this makes a nice thick pie, and pat it out firmly like this. And then we're going to put a top crust on it. And here it's all rolled out, ready to go. And today I'm using the pastry stocking to help get this on. It's very humid. Now at home, if you were having trouble with a very soft pie crust, you could just put it in the freezer for about 15 minutes, and that would make it very malleable. But this is such a forgiving crust that it's not going to make a bit of difference. Now, you want to crimp the edges. Now, meat pies like this have been around for centuries. This is a little bit much, so we'll just dispose of that. And they really were first discovered in the Middle Ages, in Middle Age literature. And the native English term for them then was called bake meat, spelled B-A-K-E, hyphen M-E-T-E, but that meant any food at all baked in a pastry shell, whether it was fruit or even fish. And a fish that they used in those years was called pilchards, and you can still get pilchards when you're in England today. I just love those old stories, probably because of the connectedness of yesterday's food to today's. There are actually no new recipes, I don't think, since Escoffier's time. We just keep reinterpreting them. And this certainly would be related to what we would call an American pot pie. See how good this pie crust is? You're going to really enjoy working with this crust if you've never made it before. Now we're going to slash it to let the steam escape. And when it's done, of course, the bubbles must come up in the center of the pie. And put a little paprika on it. And then bake this at 350 degrees for 1 hour and 15 minutes until it's a deep golden brown and the juices are all bubbling up in the center of the pie. Then allow it to stand for 15 minutes before you cut it, because that way the juices all come together. Look at the finished one over here. Isn't it a beauty? I would like that with some apple chutney, I think. Now, let's bring this over, and we're going to give it a cut and see what happened during the baking. You can see it's a good, sturdy pie. Oh, a good one here. Lost a little bit of crust, but not to worry. They always say that the cook should take the very first piece because that's the one that's apt to crumble. And I think that's kind of a good idea. So we'll pretend that this is going to be my piece. And there she comes. Ooh, that looks so good. Tuck that in there. And then with this, I would traditionally like to serve pickles because that's what the English would do. This is just one of the best meat pies that can be made. And it's just so easy to make and easy to eat because they have such a great combination of flavors and textures, and you only need a fork. This one is very savory. It would make a great tailgate picnic dish.